Hello and welcome to the Collapse Experiment. On my way back to the cabin to work on a long overdue book. Why today? Don't know. Should be every day. Should be every day I'm working on this stuff. So, it is not your fault. So, life decided that it was going to give you lemons, some rotten lemons from the very beginning. And while so many people would tell you, oh, you just got to make some lemonade, then they don't tell you how, right? You got to figure all this shit out on your own. So when I was growing up, didn't really do all that well in school. And the school wanted to have me tested. Mama always said I was special, which never happened. Eventually these people who kept track of me stopped coming around. I did first grade twice because it was so awesome. And years later, I needed to know, like what the bleep was all that about? When you're growing up and your stepdad is constantly calling you stupid and you're asking your mom help with homework, but she doesn't understand what is on the page. Kind of left with no resources. Keep in mind, this is before the internets, all right? There was no walking down to the library. You are stuck with what you have at your fingertips, which isn't much. So I went to college, the local community college, for 8 years, on and off, no degree, changing majors. I was simply told, go to college. You are going to college. You are going to be the first. That's the other thing. When you're the first in your family to go to college, you have nobody to really help you out with like what you're doing, how to do it, where do you go? It's one thing when you go to a place and somebody in your family is alumni there, right? When you're the first and you just have to figure shit out, it's not all that easy. When you're working full time, you're paying rent, you're paying tuition, you're paying for the overpriced stupid books that the teacher 9 times out of 10 doesn't even fucking use. So the last semester I was at KVCC, I took 15 credit hours. 15, 12 is full time. But there were 4 classes not related to any degree. It was just my own pure curiosity. I was like, every year I was like, man, I want to take that, but it doesn't go towards this shit that I really don't enjoy taking. Nah, my last semester there was, I'm going to take what I want. I'm going to learn what I want. And I want to see how I do. That was the first time I ever got a 4.0. And early on, in my sociology and anthropology classes, which are both 4 credit hours each, it got to the point where even the Asian guy sitting behind me started paying me to write his papers for him. And I'm like, man, all these years I was told I was a dumb shit. You're so fucking stupid. And all of a sudden, I'm the only one doing good in these classes, which led me to other things down the road. So a couple years later, I'm seeing a therapist. We're meeting weekly. And in one of the sessions, I tell him about how, when I was young, they wanted to have me tested for this, and I've always had issues with these things. And over the years, I had learned that they were actual signs of things like dyslexia. And he tried talking me out of it because he's like, no, because people use that as a crutch or an excuse to, not try harder, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if I can get a 4.0, my final semester in college, just before I leave, knowing that I probably had like some type of learning disability, it's like, I just want to fucking know. Like, there's no crutch here. I want to know what the hell's going on and why shit's been so messed up for years. So he runs me through the test, and at the end he's like, basically tells me I have a mild form of dyslexia. And keep in mind, this is like in my mid-30s, right? This isn't when I was, 9-10 years old, when stuff that I had worked past or worked through took the effort to correct on my own over years. I'm pretty damn sure it would have been a whole different diagnosis if I had been tested as a kid. I think I would have learned along with the school and my parents that there were things that I should have been doing differently. Like, I don't know, not going to a fucking prep school that treats you like shit because you're poor and different. That was one of the issues I had. I think the other issue that they had was, the fact that there were these people that were there trying to help, right? I mean, there are these people that were seeing the signs and like, hey, you should be tested for this. Perhaps we should try this. Ritalin. Never got the Ritalin. Never got tested. And a lot of it was just people like my mom saying, there's nothing wrong with him. Whereas, of course, other people were seeing something totally different. But no, my mid-30s, yep, you have a mild form of dyslexia. Oh, shit. Good to know. So a lot of the times when life is tough, you look back, you try to figure out, like, why am I the dumbass? Why does everybody blame me for this stupid shit? Usually it's the people that are blaming you for things that were the problem, right? You just need to try harder. That was something I used to hear from teachers and other people. Right, okay. Try harder at doing what I don't know I should be doing. That's great advice. That's awesome. There's a whole lot of handing off responsibility of things to you, the kid, the person who shouldn't be responsible for that, right? Like, I'm not the parent. I'm not the teacher. How is it my responsibility to know what I'm supposed to be doing in order to correct this thing that nobody will acknowledge I had? It's fascinating. There is some comfort to know that you weren't the problem. You can make things worse for yourself. You can become your own problem. And thankfully, I didn't do that. The kids running amok through the neighborhood, stealing things, God knows what else. Never did drugs. Never broke into a house or a car. Like, none of that shit, right? There was no acting out on my part. It was basically me, for the most part, hanging out my room, reading comic books. Which was really the only thing that could keep my attention. And I don't know if it was the combination of pictures and words that helped me with the whole reading thing. Because if there's one thing that I noticed over time was that I had a really hard time focusing on books. And I really worked on that in my 20s. Like, halfway through a page, my mind would just drift off, and I get to the bottom of the page, and I'm like, I have no idea what the hell this just said. So that was an issue. Reading a word and thinking it was another word, that was an issue. So these days, my oldest daughter, and they brought this up when she was in the NICU, like, does anybody here have any learning disabilities? And I remember raising my hand, and they were like, oh, did they diagnose you in school? I said, no, later. And they're like, well, that doesn't count. I was just like, are you fucking serious? Because genetically, if one person has something, that means that the child is likely to have something. So they never took that seriously, which again, you're not the problem. Like, you tell these people exactly the answer that they're looking for, and then for some reason the answer's not good enough. And these days my daughter is bringing home stuff from school, which I recognize, hey, this is usually like a symptom of something like dyslexia. Consistently writing different letters or numbers backwards. Most of the shit that she brings home, spelling isn't correct. And then I learned that the school has this policy of like, well, we don't really push the whole spelling thing because we think that they just kind of develop it over time and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, so let me get this straight. You are reinforcing bad habits for years before you decide to correct it. Because that's what they're telling me, right? I mean, is that not what you heard? We believe that they'll just kind of figure it out. Like, what the fuck are you doing with them if you're not teaching them? So I keep bringing this up to my wife, and my wife tells me this bit about they just kind of work it out on their own bullshit. Which I'm like, this doesn't sound like teaching. This sounds like a lazy ass daycare center. And she's like, well, I believe that too. And I'm like, is that how you learned growing up? Because I don't remember that. I remember a weekly spelling test. Every week there was like 10 words, maybe more. You get tested on it at the end of the week. They used to have spelling bees. I haven't heard anything about a spelling bee. They used to do it for the different grades. But no, Michigan has this new stupid law where if a child is not up to certain expectations by third grade, they are automatically held back. My daughter is in second grade. Her nephew, who goes to a different school downstate, he got to third grade and he couldn't even read yet. The more this shit goes on, it's like, it's very obvious, like, people are just being set up for failure. And this has been going on well before me, well before you. People just not taking responsibility. Piss poor policies. Creating piss poor people. And aside from people just taking matters into their own hands, I'm not condoning violence. As in taking their education into their own hands because they realize that the people that were supposed to be teaching them didn't do their fucking job. Or the people who were supposed to be looking after them didn't do their fucking job. It's only then that you can really improve and get past all that garbage and actually move ahead. At least that's what I'm learning. Unfortunately, I think for a lot of us, it just comes too late. I am 45. 45 years old. I'm just now reading the books I probably should have been reading in my teens and in my 20s. Back when you had the free time to do so. That's the other thing. Doing this stuff does not get easier as you get older. You can make time, but you have less of it. So I'm going to try to do what I can for my daughter, but goddamn, she doesn't fucking listen to me either. At all. You can't make me read. You don't have to have a switch either. So yeah, you're not the problem. And certainly you don't want to be the problem either, right? Don't be the person who did the same shit to you, right? You start seeing something, fucking call people out on it, right? Hey, can we get so-and-so tested for this? So that we know what the fuck to do and we're not lagging behind for years because you didn't do your fucking job. That's too much to ask for though, right? God, if we have another kid at this school diagnosed with this, it's gonna look bad. Who gives a fuck? It's your job. There was a girl recently that sued her high school because she got to graduation. They graduated her. They gave her an honorary diploma. And she could not read or write. And good for her. She went and talked to somebody who could read or write, called a lawyer, and sued their ass for fraud. You did not prepare me for the world and you did not do your fucking job. Good on her. I think these places forgot like what the hell they're supposed to be doing because I hear very little about reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's all about be a good person, follow directions, be nice. And then they get home and they're just complete horrible fucking monsters who don't listen to you, won't do what you say. You give them a few school type tasks in order to help them out with the things you notice that they're lagging behind on, and they're a complete tool about it. And I'm being delicate. And yes, I'm talking about my kids. So I don't know. At this point, there is only so much I can do, right? Because it's very obvious. Like, people just do not fucking listen to me, regardless of what I know. You don't know, you're not the professional. Well, you're not acting like one either. So anyways, that's it about it for me today. I've got some stuff to do. I've only got a few hours to do it. I still have to start a fire because it is like 32 degrees out. Why does it have to suck today? Keep on typing. Hello, and welcome to the Collapse Experiment. There's something to be said about doing it is what you're meant to be doing, which is, for many people, it's a hard thing to find. Some guys, they like to work on cars. Other guys, like me, enjoy activities like writing. There's something called the flow state. Athletes will talk about it. Artists will talk about it. It's where you get so focused or involved in whatever it is that you're doing, you lose time. You are in the moment. There's no distractions. The only thing that is happening is what you are currently working on. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, getting into that state is usually a side hobby. It's not your job. It's not what you do for a living. It's that thing that you wish you were doing while you're at work. I think it's important for everyone to figure out what that is. It's different for everyone. Some people, it's simply playing video games. Not one of my favorite pastimes. Heck, if I play for too long, I usually feel guilty afterwards and realize I could have been doing something productive. And a lot of times I'll find games for cheap. And eventually, days or weeks later, I'll pop it into the PlayStation and see what it's all about. I'll play it for an hour or two. I'll start to get the hang of it. And then I just never go back. Like, there's no desire to finish this game or figure out. Because I have heard way too many people say, oh yeah, it took me about, 40 hours to blah, blah. 40 hours? And I know other people will log on far more than that. I met a guy months ago. I was at one of the game shops and he was talking about he had 1,200 hours logged on to one of the Black Ops games. I don't even know which one, but 1,200 hours. And I'm like, did you get paid for this? Of course not. Nope. Goes to his job, goes home. Is at the job for like 8 hours, probably goes home, plays for another 10 to 12 hours, sleeps, repeats. I don't know how these guys do it. I don't understand it. I'm not going to pretend to understand it. Never quite got into the flow state with art or drawing. There were a few times I do have some pieces where I was like, I am onto something here. There's no money on charcoal though. Charcoal drawing. I got really good at it. It was one of those things where I could just get the texture and the shading, and the realism started to come out. Unless it's paint, unless it's sculpture, charcoal, you're lucky if somebody offers you $5. But writing, nah, I just did another 20 pages for my book. Not finished yet. Getting there. It's coming towards its conclusion, but no, days like today are far and few in between, and I definitely have to change that. So I've got a few other things to do. In the meantime, I hope everyone's doing well. Keep on typing.